Obedience is not a way to get closer to God. Obedience is not a way to get a relationship with God. Obedience simply reveals where your heart already is. Here, Joshua is going to highlight the urgency that you need to remove these idols. But I want you to notice the tense of Israel every time they respond. In verse 21, they said what? We will. What tense is that? Future tense. Verse 23, we will serve and we will obey. What tense is that? Do you notice none of them were saying anything in present tense? He said, right now, today, as for me and my household, we're going to serve the Lord. You decide today. And what did they keep saying? We will. Not today. Come on, Joshua. Just let us in the promised land. You're being dramatic. He's like, no, choose today. And they were unwilling to say today, yes, we'll get rid of that. Future tense. One of the biggest dangers for Christians today is the future tense, isn't it? And then they go their whole life never getting around to the things that they know God wants them to do, and then they die on their deathbed with regrets. Oh, once I have more time, I'll start to get serious. Oh, once my kids grow up, then I'll really get serious. How do you even know you'll have that time later? Why are you so arrogant to think that God is entitled to give you years later on to obey him when he expects you to obey him today? Do you see the arrogance in that statement to God? You're presuming he's going to give you another 20 years to get around to obeying him when all of his commandments are not conditioned on future tense, it's present tense. Today you do it while you have today. It doesn't matter if it's inconvenient for you today, you do it today. Well, I'm really busy with the kids. Yeah, there's no condition about obeying God based on your busyness of life. You do it today. Oh, I'll get serious. No. You get serious about God today. Do you see the urgency? The reason why idolatry kept seeping into Israel because they lacked the urgency that they needed to have. God was always giving them chance. This is not the first time he did this exercise. He did it with Moses. He did it with Joshua 8. He did it again. But there was no urgency. For 40 years, they never got rid of the idols. The way one theologian said it, he said the reason why Israel was in the wilderness for 40 years is not because it takes 40 years to get through the wilderness, right? You know that they could have got it right away. They needed 40 years for God to address their idols. It didn't take 40 years for God to take them out of Egypt into the promised land. It took God 40 years to take the Egypt out of the hearts of Israel. And even after 40 years, it still hasn't fully got to now. Yes, there's a few faithful people like Joshua and Caleb. I mean, literally, we can count on our hands how many. But the majority of them still have Egypt in their heart. Now, there is one command here Joshua gives, though. He says, put away your foreign gods in verse 23. And he uses the word incline. Incline your hearts. Now, incline. What is that? Do you guys know how lumberjacks cut trees? I don't. So I don't know. But I've learned this from someone who does. You know, big trees, from the person who told me, they say they don't cut it through all the way. Because what would happen if you cut it through? It might fall on you, you die, right? So if it's a really big tree, what they do is they cut in an incline. Because when you cut an incline, what will happen is that this gap of an incline, the gravity will naturally make it lean towards that direction, and the tree will eventually fall towards the angle of the incline. So you don't have to cut away all the way through, because if you did, it might fall on you. You just create an incline, you kind of just let time take its toll and gravity take its way. Joshua's saying, incline your hearts to God. What he is saying is, the direction of your heart will be exposed over time. Because from the outside, everything looked right with Israel. But he's telling them, your heart is inclined towards idols, and that's going to come out over time. Because the longer you live, your decisions you make, how you view people, how you view money, what you do or what you don't do, all of that reveals the inclinations of your heart. And so the antidote to idolatry is to incline your heart away from the idols and towards God. It doesn't mean that it's like this 180 to there are 20 things I'm going to do starting today. Don't worry about the actions. It starts with the heart inclination. Which direction is your heart pointing towards? Because whatever your heart is inclined towards, over time, everything will show where the inclination of your heart is. That's why when trials come, people whose heart have been inclined towards Christ will not fall away, no matter how hard the trials are. Not because they became strong in the trials all of a sudden, but that the trials revealed the heart was always inclined towards God. And there have been people I grew up with that seem like they follow Jesus for their whole lives until a big trial comes. One of my friends whose mom passed away, and that trial caused him to quote unquote turn away from God. That trial didn't cause anybody to turn away from God. It just exposed that their hearts were already inclined away from God. Do you see that? Suffering just exposes the inclinations of your heart. Because it's easy to say all the right answers when you're in the land of milk and honey. When you're in green pastures and still waters, it's easy to say Yahweh is God. Oh, bless him. Oh, well, I love Yahweh. It's in the dark valleys where your heart inclination comes out. Do you really trust in the good shepherd when you're in the valley of the shadow of death? Or are you kind of looking for these other idols to give you temporary comfort because you're so scared? Can you still say, can you be like Job and say God gives and takes away, but blessed be the name of the Lord, even when God takes away all your kids and everything that matters to you? Do you see that? It's the inclination of your heart that will reveal whether idols are still residing in your heart. Because an idol is when a good thing becomes an ultimate thing, it is a bad thing. Right? Idols in and of themselves, there's nothing wrong with them. It is when that thing, whatever it is, becomes an ultimate thing in your life, when it's the center of your life, that's the idol. And so you ask yourself, when I look at my life and how I revolve everything, my schedule, my decisions, my thoughts, what is it revealing about the inclination of my heart? Does it reveal a complete dependence and trust in Jesus, or is it something else that keeps coming out? The way one theologian said is, if you want to know who you trust, look at your bank account and your prayer request. Those are the two clearest indicators of who you really worship. Because if all your prayer requests about like, hey, give a better job, or help, heal me because we're sick, or take away struggle, your prayer is revealing you're not really trusting God. You're using God to give you the things that you want. Do you see the difference? And that same theologian said, and you look at your wallet, if 100% of your income are for yourself, you worship yourself. I'm not saying what percentage to give to God. I'm just saying, where your treasure is, that's where your heart is also, as Jesus said. Is that making sense? And so the antidote to idolatry is not, tell me the 5 things, Andrew, so that I can battle the idols. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying give money to God, then you don't have idols. Or pray different requests, then you... No, I'm saying all of these actions are not ways that turn your heart away from idols. They reveal what you already idolize. Right? That's what obedience is about. Obedience is not a way to get closer to God. Obedience is not a way to get a relationship with God. Obedience just reveals where your heart already is. That's why 2 people from the outside can look exactly the same, because they're both doing the same actions. But one person can have a close, intimate relationship with Jesus, and the other person could be a legalist going to hell with the same actions. Because what did Jesus indicate? It's not the actions he cares about, it's what? The heart. Because if you're giving money for yourself, or for this, or to gain something from God, you're like the Pharisees who's using God, not trusting God. And if you're praying because you want people to look at you differently, because you're just using God. Obedience is not a way to get closer to God. Obedience is not a way to get a relationship with God. Obedience simply reveals where your heart already is.